This is the moment we've all been waiting for the thousands in attendance and the millions watching around the world. Let's get ready to rumble!
Welcome to the Junkyard Pod, hosted by Tony Pesta and Jackson Flickinger. The Cleveland Cavaliers put on another dominant display against the Orlando Magic, leading from wire to wire for the second straight game, and now taking a 2-0 series lead, heading to Orlando for games 3 and 4. Jackson, how are you feeling about the Cavs right now?
I'm feeling pretty good. I mean, you can't not feel good after seeing the Cavs just, I think, impose their will on the Magic for two straight games. And we talked about all the ways that the Magic can make it difficult for the Cavs. And I think the Cavs have sort of answered those questions and done a really good job of just playing their style of basketball. And I think the most encouraging part for the Cavs is that they're not even playing their best. You know, Max Strus hasn't really had a great game. You know, you haven't had a good shooting performance from Darius Garland. Darius Garland kind of turned it around a little bit in the end of game two, but it's not like you're getting a whole lot from the bench. George Niang can't hit a three to save his life. So
Yeah, he hasn't hit a 3 yet.
right. So it's just like, you know, there's a lot of things that I think the Cavs can still do better, and there's reasons to believe that, hey, this offense can be better than what it's shown. Because I don't think 96 points is going to get it done in Orlando the same way it's getting it done in Cleveland, but there's reasons to believe that, hey, you know, they can score more.
Yeah, I agree. It's hard not to feel good right now. The Cavs have really almost flipped the table on all the issues that we were worried about, the rebounding, the defense, all that. They've been so good in all those categories and have really highlighted Orlando's flaws in that regard. You mentioned the shooting across the roster. Strus and Niang are a combined 2 of 18 from downtown. If you add Mitchell into that mix, it's 7 for 36, all three of them shooting under 30%. Darius Garland hasn't had like that volume shooting game. I think he was 4 of 7 in yesterday's game.
Yeah,
6 of
probably shouldn't have
13.
included him.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Well, that's why I'm here to correct the score.
thank you.
He's 6 of 13 so far in this series, which is actually leads all shooters. He's made the most 3-pointers. He's shooting 46%. The thing is, and we are going to talk about Darius Garland in part 2 of this. I should have said at the top, this is part 1 of a 2-part thing that we've been doing. We did it in game 1. We have the pod recapping game 2, and then tomorrow you'll have a preview / recap of the trends that we saw emerge, and we will be talking about Darius Garland and that, so stay tuned for it. But with that said, I get what you were saying, because Garland still hasn't had like that volume shooting game. He really started filling it up in the second half of yesterday, but other than that, it feels like overall across the roster, the Cavs still have some offensive firepower that they haven't tapped into.
Yeah, and give credit to the Magic's defense, especially Jalen Suggs. I think he's done a really good job on Darius, where
Definitely.
I don't think this is a wow, Darius sucks series, because listen, we're the first ones to tell you when when it's a Darius sucks game.
Yeah.
So I think there's, you know, reasons to be optimistic about this offense, and I don't like, it's just really hard to be too pessimistic right now with how well they're playing in all the other facets of the game, that you can overlook the turnovers, which has been a huge issue, but you can kind of overlook them just because of, hey, like, you can't be perfect in every area of the game.
Yeah, they definitely have room to be better, but they've been good enough, more than good enough to lead wire to
Right.
wire for 2 games. One thing about the offense, while they're still not, I mean, they've scored under 100 in 2 games here, but I think they're playing very smart basketball. I want to talk more about this in the next episode as well, but I think they're hunting switches. They're screening with different players to get the type of defenders that they want involved in the action. You're seeing Okoro screen, Garland, like they're really going at Paolo Banchero defensively. I've noticed they're
Hmm.
really putting him in every action they can. And Donovan Mitchell has just, I know he didn't have a great second half. He was 2 of 8. He only had 4 points, but for basically this entire series so far, he has just shredded their point of attack. Even with Jalen Suggs on him at the beginning of this game prior to that injury, Donovan Mitchell just had no problem getting to his spots. That dunk that he had early in the game, the most athletic he has looked in a while. And it just has anything the Orlando Magic tried to do to him, it just hasn't mattered. He has had no problem generating looks for him or his teammates.
Yeah, one of the things I think is really interesting about putting Paolo in all of those actions is that Paolo is their offense. He's not
Yeah, you're
technically
tiring
the
him
point
out.
guard, but he's the one who's running everything, and it just really helps when you are able to put him in all of those actions. The way that we've seen teams like last year put Darius Garland in all of those actions.
Mhm.
So because you can see the effect on both ends. But one of the things that I think is really interesting is that in from December through February, we saw the Cavs shoot a bunch of threes and get a bunch of offensive rebounds. And the threes have kind of stayed, but the offensive rebounds and attacking the glass really hasn't. And then you look at this game,
Mhm.
18 second chance points. 18 second chance points is massive in a game where your opponent's only has 86 points and every single basket's like a fight. So,
Yeah.
and you look 39 three-pointer 39 three-point attempts. They didn't really shoot it well, 31%, but they're playing the kind of basketball that you want to see them play. And I know that if you listen to any of the Orlando Magic fan podcasts, like they're always like, they just need to make more shots. And it's like, true. But the Cavs are a better three-point shooting team, and there's reasons to believe that, hey, they will start making some of the shots that they're generating, because it's not like it's not like last year in the playoffs against the Knicks where they were taking a bunch of threes because they didn't have any other choice. They're
Yeah.
taking these threes because they're generating good offense.
And that's what we're seeing with the Magic, honestly. It's like we flipped the table from the Knicks series because we were taking a lot of threes in that series because we had guys who the Knicks didn't care about if you were shooting. If it was Jetty or whoever, Okoro, they didn't care
Don't
if
need
any
to
of them
don't
shot.
need to say bad
I
things
know.
about
Listen,
Chetty. That's
Jetty's
come
an
on.
efficient shooter. It's just we've talked about this before. Teams, the Knicks felt comfortable letting him shoot. The
Yes,
same
they
way that
did.
the Cavs feel comfortable letting basically on Orlando. Anyone is able to shoot. We'll just transition to the defense here because I think that's the other thing that has just been completely awesome. I mean, they've held
Mhm.
Orlando under 90 points 2 games in a row. They've packed the paint. Orlando shooting 16% worse in the paint than they did in the regular season. They have the lowest field goal percentage of any team in the playoffs right now by 4%. Orlando's bigs have resorted to shooting 3-pointers because there's just nothing they can get in the paint. That's Jarrett Allen, that's Evan Mobley putting the fear of God into some of their players. They aren't even looking to shoot at times when they're down there. And really, this is kind of the vision of the two bigs. If you ever were to see the two big lineups succeed, right now they have a plus 14 net rating. They've dominated in the paint. They have not really held back the offense. Evan Mobley has already hit more 3-pointers in this series alone than Derek Favors did in his entire playoff career. And Mobley has scored more points in each of these 2 games than he did at any point in the Knicks series. And really, like I said, this is just this. If you want 2 big lineups to succeed, this is the type of series where you're going to see it. And to their credit, I think a lot of times when we talk about 2 big lineups, we think of like the lumbering, uncoordinated bigs. Like Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen are 2 coordinated, versatile bigs who can do stuff like what we're seeing right now.
First, so before the
I
show,
threw a lot at you.
before the show, I said I don't really have any stats for this game, and then Tony's like, "Well, I got a few stats." Well, I guess his few stats were, well, let me go and look up all of Derek Favors' game logs and let me see how we played in the playoffs.
I got him memorized. Listen,
That's
Mobley's getting close to passing his career high in points, but
what
I'll
is
save that for when it happens.
what? Oh,
I'll tell you.
I'll have to do my
It's
own research. That's
Derek
just like,
Favors at one point went off for a 20 bomb. So Mobley's getting there.
yeah.
When it
Well,
happens, you'll hear it here first.
if he would have scored 4 points in the
I
second
know.
half of game one, could have unleashed that. But one of the things that, going back and looking at some of the highlights and stuff, the Cavs have done a great job of packing the paint, and it made me think that, like, oh, they're just giving Orlando a ton of open threes. They're actually doing a pretty good job of
Yeah.
rotating out
Mhm.
as well, which is something that this team did not have one good rotation from like the beginning of March
Yeah.
through the end of the regular season. Like there were no situations where like Darius Garland, I don't think he rotated out to a perimeter shooter after his guy drove for months.
Yeah.
So like, but this series he's been phenomenal. I mean, they've all been phenomenal at doing that. So they're not. One of the things that they've done a really good job is they're not like overcommitting to when they see a shooter catch on the perimeter. They're not overcommitting to allow a drive by, but
Mm.
what they are doing is they're still putting up a little bit of a contest, which that that affects guys who one aren't good shooters but need to take those shots. So I think some of the talk about, well, the Cavs are just leaving guys wide open like it's, 2008 Rajon Rondo, just, he has like 10 minutes to just, check the wind before he takes the shot. Like, they're not doing that. But what they are doing is they're making the Magic very uncomfortable. And I think this is kind of an interesting series in the sense that the Magic, they're taking a lot of threes and a lot of shots at their rim. They're not really taking anything in the mid-range, which you don't want to take stuff in the mid-range, obviously, over the course of an 82-game season. But in a 4-game series, you would like to be able to have some kind of 3-level scoring option, and they don't really have that besides Paolo. Paolo's okay with taking mid-range shots, and you're also okay with Paolo scoring 20. If you're the Magic, you're okay with him scoring 21 points on 20 shots because that's better than, guys not doing anything out there. So that's where I think the Magic are just really a limited offense, and the Cavs are doing a good job of just making them super uncomfortable.
Yeah, 1 through 5, the Cavs have just been playing so connected defensively. They're switching, they're contesting shots. We're seeing Allen and Mobley trust the rest of the team a little more in terms of not overextending themselves and overhelping where they're not needed. And really, I mean, Evan Mobley has done as good of a job on Banchero as anyone could have asked. Even Niang has done a great job on Banchero. Again, 1 through 5, this team is just doing their best to make Orlando uncomfortable and funnel things, out of the paint and into the 3-point line where they don't have these prolific 3-point shooters who, even if you were leaving them wide open, they're not great shooters, but the Cavs are also putting in that extra effort to get out and close out to those shots. So it's really just been as good of a defensive stretch as we have seen from the Cavs.
And my least favorite stat in the entire world is the open 3-point shot.
Yeah.
How many 3-pointers you're giving up that are open? I just hate it because it doesn't paint a good picture of anything. It's really distorts what's happening. So if you are looking at this series and you say the Magic are missing this many wide open shots, don't talk to me. Because
fair enough.
Because it's like Jonathan Isaac, he's taken probably what's considered a wide open shot, but he is still having Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen close out on him. It's like, he's 1 for 7 from 3. I don't think all 7 were wide open, even if they are considered wide open. So I think I
get what you're saying.
There's just a lot of context there that I think, I think Jonathan Isaac, Jalen Suggs are going to make more shots at home, but it's not, if the Cavs play this level of defense, they're not just going to, you're not just going to have a guy go 5 for 7, another guy go for 4 for 6, that's not in the cards unless the Cavs change how they're playing defense.
Yeah, and to any Orlando fan or anyone who's worried that the Magic, they have not shot the ball well, and you'd expect at some point they will start to hit shots. If they hit any of those shots in the first 2 games, it would have been a much more competitive game. But you can make the same argument that if the Cavs hit their shots, well, it wouldn't even matter if Orlando was hitting theirs because they have just been so good defensively, and their offensive process has consistently generated good looks that hopefully at some point we get to see a shootout between these 2 teams. It's not likely, but it would be a nice.
What is a shootout?
Anything above 100 points with these 2 teams.
Okay,
they crack 100, both of them. That would be the over, I'd imagine. They would hit the over, whatever the betting line is there. So I wanted to mention this at the top because I feel like it's the main takeaway from game 2, and we've kind of just neglected our boy, but I guess we'll add him in here because, listen, this might have been a hot take at the start of the series. It would have been a scorching hot take if I said it a year ago.
I don't know where this is going. Okay.
Jarrett Allen has been the best player on the floor for either team, I think. I just cannot overstate how good he has been on both sides. 38 rebounds so far across 2 games. He had 18 in the first game, 20 in the second. That's more than he had in the entire Knicks series. Orlando just had no answer for him. His physicality is off the charts. His pursuit of the ball is just, he's constantly out there tracking everything down. He's running out to the perimeter to track them down. He's punking everyone if they try to box him out. Honestly, I'm out of jokes when it comes to the lights being too bright. I don't even know where else to take this because Allen has just been so good. He's been their anchor on both ends, and I think game 2 is the best game of his entire career.
Well, now you're putting me on the spot because I have to say, I agree with you. That's the best game of his career. But, I mean, 9 offensive rebounds, that's crazy.
One short of a playoff record for the Cavs.
Just for this series and how possessions are so important in a series where neither team is going to shoot it well. And he's just, the Magic came in. So before game 1, Jamal Mosley, the Magic head coach, said that he needs to, for his team to win, they need to defend the 3-point line and they need to rebound. And you can say they defended the 3-point line, but they have not rebounded. They knew that this was going to be a big thing, and they haven't been able to do anything with Jarrett Allen. And I think some of that comes down to some of their switching. They do switch. I still think they switch a little too much for my liking, and you sometimes get Jarrett Allen down there against, not Jonathan Isaac, not Wendell Carter, and he's just winning every one of those matchups. And that's what you have to do to a team that switches. You have to punish them. And that's what the Cavs haven't always done. And that's kind of what's made it so frustrating when you have this 2 big lineup, is that sometimes you don't get the benefits of having those 2 bigs. And it's like, if you don't get the benefits, what's the point of running this? But this series, they've gotten all the benefits. You even look at, Evan Mobley just punishing all of the, every time he gets a guard on him, he's just taking him straight to the basket. It's like, this is what you've always wanted to see from both Allen and Mobley. And I know we're talking about Allen, but Mobley has been phenomenal too. And I think that's, it's easy to overlook that just because of how good Allen has been. And whenever anyone talks about Mobley, they're just like, oh, he made a couple threes. Isn't that cool? And it's like, great. But he's doing the things that,
he's doing so much more.
Right, and he's doing the things that you need him to do in order to make the 2-man lineup work. So that's where it's just been super impressive by Allen and Mobley too.
Yeah, I think that pairing right there is playing with so much synergy right now. They are, at times throughout the regular season, it feels like they're maybe stepping on each other's toes or kind of getting in each other's way. That has not happened in this series. They are where they need to be at all times. I think Allen has done such a fantastic job of timing when he ducks in to get the pass, timing when he seals his man. Mobley has been able to punish those mismatches every time they're available. The Cavs in general have done just such a good job, give JB his credit for having them prepared and ready for every single play. If there's a mismatch out there, they're finding it. And whether they score or not, they're yielding a good look more often than not. And again, with Allen, just nonstop energy, nonstop making up for everything that happened in that Knicks series. Just really, he's been Mitchell Robinson to the Magic. And I think Orlando fans are going to see Allen and Mobley in their nightmares if it continues going this way.
I mean, Mitchell Robinson wasn't scoring 16, 17 points a game. So, Jarrett Allen, this version of Jarrett Allen is, I don't want to say he's better than Mitchell Robinson because Mitchell Robinson is very good at what he does, but you know what I mean? Jarrett Allen's
he's the best player on the
he's a complete basketball player.
Yeah.
He's been a complete basketball player, and that's something that he wasn't able to do, last series. And it's really interesting after the games, listening to the Magic talk about Jarrett Allen. They talk about him to, the question is well, how do you box out Jarrett Allen? They're just dude, I don't know, man. He's just, and that it just feels so much like the Knicks series where it's
just
we gotta ask everybody how to get a defensive rebound, and everyone's I don't know, if I knew how to get a defensive rebound, I might have gotten one. But that's, and that's kind of what Allen has done to the Magic, and that's just, you look at their defensive rebounding stats, Paolo, starting power forward, small forward, whatever.
Yeah.
Like 2 defensive rebounds.
Mm.
Jonathan Isaac, 3 defensive rebounds. Wagner, 5 defensive rebounds. It's like, that's the kind of stuff you were seeing from Okoro, Mobley, and Allen against the Knicks, and now you're doing that against them. And it's like, if you do that, you have such a wider margin for error. Like, you can overcome a bad Mitchell game because it's like, hey, we're getting a ton of rebounds. You can overcome a game where you turn it over, was it 15 times, in another game where Garland had 4 turnovers, Mitchell had 3 turnovers. You can overcome that because you're getting so many possessions by, offensive rebounds. So that's where it's like, if the Magic, and I know we're going to talk about this later, but for them to come back, they have to clean up things like this, because even if you shoot better, it's really hard when you have such a small margin for error and also like no point guard.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. Allen has just energized the Cavs with every single one of those rebounds and deflated the Magic every time he does that. In a game where, again, these possessions are so important, Allen just keeps securing stops by getting that defensive rebound and then giving the Cavs extra opportunities on the offensive glass. Allen has 38 rebounds in the series, like I mentioned. Orlando's leading rebounder, Franz Wagner, has just 14. So he has more than doubled Orlando's leading rebounder so far. It's just truly such a sight to see.
And the second chance points, 18 second chance points, that's the same amount of points that the Magic got in the first quarter. So it's like, you can't give up a quarter's worth of points in that department and really expect to ever win.
Yeah, I mean, that's a fifth of the points they scored in the game. I think the Cavs only had 16 in the fourth. So that right there.
That was tough, but
it really is a difference maker. And you can't overlook how Allen has played. One final guy that I want to talk about before we head into our second part here, really 2 guys, Isaac Okoro and Caris LeVert. Now, LeVert didn't have the best second half. They kind of went away from him a bit, but he was the spirit of Michael Jordan entered him for a second in that first quarter, because it was everything you want to see from Caris LeVert. Came in off the bench and just started rattling off easy buckets, got downhill, threw a dime to Allen, and at that point, Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse was going crazy. LeVert really energized them. And then later in the game, Okoro does the same thing. Incredible defense. We didn't give him enough credit when we were talking about the Cavs defense. He's been so good every minute he's been out there. Had a great drive in transition. Again, energized the Cavs. Just those 2 guys coming off the bench and really electrifying the crowd. The Cavs have started both of these games by punching Orlando in the face. And a big reason for that, first off, Allen and Mitchell had the first 20 points of this game. I don't know if I mentioned that in this episode yet, but they started off hot. And then you get LeVert and Okoro in off the bench, and it took it to a whole nother level.
I don't have a whole lot to add with LeVert. You kind of caught me off guard. I wasn't expecting to talk about a guy with 8 points and 1 assist.
I think he had them all in the first quarter, or his first.
Probably, but if next time we talk about a guy with 8 points and 1 assist, it needs to be like Sam Merrill.
Who did not play today because LeVert started so good in the first half that they didn't turn to him. They didn't need him. I think we'll see him again.
Caris may be more important as the series goes along. I don't think this was a standout performance. I think if you said, Tony, before the game, Caris LeVert's going to have 8 points, would you sign up for it? Maybe. No. Yeah, so it's like, we're not going to...
But it was the way that he did it, because it was all in that first stint, and it really energized the Cavs. Listen, 8 points in a series where sometimes that's half the points that they're going to score in a quarter.
Mitchell coming out with 14 points, every time he scored, he was pumping up the crowd. That's what energized everything. I don't want to, give...
You're not giving
Caris credit for something that...
You're not giving him his flowers, man.
What I mean,
you're hating on Caris. We get a good Caris game once every 2 months.
This isn't a good Caris game. Caris was better in the playoffs last year against the Knicks.
I agree. But
this
was
this
was a good Caris game.
Right.
Okay. Well, you know what? It was a good Okoro game. We agree on.
It's damning with faint praise. Like, I expect more from Caris LeVert. You don't expect anything. So I guess like.
Hey, you know what?
Like, if Marcus Morris came off the bench and gave you 8 points, you'd be like, dude, that was sweet. Yeah, that'd be great. But you should expect more from Caris LeVert. Isaac Okoro, 10 points and great defense. Yeah. 4 steals. Like, yeah.
Step back 3-pointer. Anybody?
Yeah, sure. But yeah, like, so that's like definitely a good Isaac Okoro game. I
Mhm.
think he's done a really good job of playing those passing lanes, especially when you have George Niang on a Palo, where he's able to kind of just disrupt off ball and make it really difficult for him to, you know, set up his teammates like he would want to. So I think Isaac has done a phenomenal job, especially this last game.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's you know, it's what you want to see from Isaac.
Yeah. Well, I got that one out of you. No, I think the main thing with Isaac, aside from obviously being a very good defender, they've just been using him like a basketball player throughout this series. He hasn't been sitting in the corner uh, for very long stretches. He has been up there screening. He's been handling the ball. He's been free to run in transition. They've
Well,
let him
one
look a little more free.
one of the things that's interesting is that he's not standing in the corner, but like George Niang is standing in the corner. So
Hmm.
they kind of have his role inverted and kind of are using him as almost the big when he's on the floor with Niang. And I think
Yeah.
that's kind of interesting and
Hmm.
a smart way to use him because, George Niang is better. I mean, in theory, better at just those catch and shoot threes. Can't exactly say that after the first two games of the series.
Hmm.
But George, like, Okoro is much better when you give him an opportunity to play basketball. So I think that's kind of interesting, and I wish they kind of did that more in the regular season. But that's
Yeah. Hmm.
especially down the end, like the last month and a half of the season. I feel like Isaac has been like an afterthought, and
Hmm.
it's been kind of frustrating with how good he looked in that stretch from December to the All Star break.
Yeah, and the way they've been using him, I mean, we'll talk a little bit more about this in the next episode, but the way they've been using him has just been really, really smart because a lot of times he's being guarded by Banchero, and they're just having Isaac come up and set the
Right.
screen, and they're conceding the switch right away, and it's putting Banchero in that action. But I want to get into that in the next episode. So that's all for this episode of the Junkyard Pod. Thank you so much for watching, and like we said, stay tuned. Tomorrow we will be uploading a segment of In or Out, previewing game 3 and recapping a few more things we saw from game 2. You don't want to miss it. With all that being said, go Cavs.
I agree. Go Cavs.